Welcome to Let's Talk Antigonish, the podcast where we sit down with neighbors, experts, and friends to explore the stories, the questions, and the big little issues that shape life in our town, one conversation at a time. Today we're talking with Mayor Sean Cameron about the rather large property tax increase here in the town of Antigonish. How much money is it raising, and what do we need that money for? Sean's here to answer all our questions. Hello there, and welcome to Let's Talk Antigonish. It is me, Justin.
And this is Anuj.
And we are super excited today to be speaking with our mayor, the town of Antigonish Mayor Sean Cameron.
Welcome,
Sean.
Well, thank you, guys.
Yeah, and this is a subject that's been on everyone's mind, at least for the past few weeks, quite a bit. And I'm sure you, Sean, have been answering questions about this nonstop. But it is the property rate tax increase.
Yeah, it is. This is probably the single largest rate that I can recall, and I've been on council for 20 years. And so it works out about a 15% increase to most residents.
Yeah, from last year's budget to this year, 15%.
Correct, yeah.
And there is, I will mention that there is on the town's website a whole section.
Huge.
A very well put together section answering a lot of the most common questions.
Absolutely. I was also pleasantly surprised when we actually did the research for this podcast.
Yeah. So we'll be asking some of the questions that the answers are on there, but also
Sure.
I'm just curious because it's a large tax increase, and I'm sure immediately everyone goes to you and is annoyed. Nobody likes tax rate increases. So I'm just curious as to what the feedback has been that you've been getting personally, or the town has been getting.
There's been mixed feedback. A lot of the older residents, those who don't have their taxes embedded in their mortgage, are actually getting the tax bill, and they're seeing the increase. They're like, whoa, okay, what's up? What do you have to do? Once you explain the amount of work that has to be done, they're understanding. And some of them even said, well, in realistic, like, why didn't you raise taxes 3 or 4 cents every year for the last 10 years and rather than hitting us all at once?
Oh, well, that's actually a good question.
Yeah.
Why didn't that happen?
Well, there was a bunch of factors. The previous councils didn't have the forecast. I don't think they did the strategic planning that this council has done. Typically, what we do is a capital plan. You just project 5 years out. So if you have a project in the books, year 2 or year 3 or year 4, and usually you do one big project every 3 or 4 years, and every year you do your paving. But what they were doing was cutting back on paving. Instead of paving roads, we were patching.
How much money are you expecting to raise extra with this increase?
I believe it's well over 1.2 million
a year.
Yeah.
So tell us about the changes that you're going to be implementing with this increase in the
Additional
budget.
revenue that you hope to generate.
All right. The West Street project, to do it correctly, it'll be a little over $4 million.
Okay.
So we're going to have to dig up the street. We're going to lay new water and sewer lines, and then reinstate the street, and then pave over it so it's a smooth surface.
Does that include taking up the current active transport bike lane thing?
No.
Okay.
There's misinformation out there
Right.
that we're going to dig that up.
Okay, that stays.
Because if you look where the fire hydrants are located, every fire hydrant has a valve. And when they did the active transportation, they paved over the valves. So they had to locate them, dig them up so we could find the valves. So that's why people saw some activity with people digging up. In hindsight, it would have been nice to put the new water and sewer lines under the active transportation trail. Therefore, in the future, if you have any breaks, you're not disrupting the flow of traffic. You're only disrupting bicycle lanes.
That is a good idea. But that obviously can't happen now.
No, that's, like I said, 2020, that's in the back mirror.
So the budget increase is helping to pay for those sorts of projects. And if I'm understanding what you're saying, like in the past few years, there hasn't been a lot of money spent on those projects. And now we've got this idea, like, look, we're going to just do a whole whack of these infrastructure projects in one go, hence the tax rate increase?
Correct. Again, council can only make decisions when they're informed about the infrastructure.
True.
Our old engineer has retired. We have a new engineer, and he presented a gloom and doom picture of the town and the
When
age
was
of our
that?
pipes. That would be in February, March.
This year.
Yes. So And because of all this information, we are now delayed. Like we're about 2 weeks to a month behind in a lot of our projects
Right.
because of the amount of detail and information that we had received. Just to put it in perspective, when I got reelected in 2020, our first budget was presented in May of 2021. We had an in-camera meeting starting at 5 o'clock. And at 6 o'clock, we moved into open council, and they said, okay, your in-camera session, here's your budget. This is what we want you to do. And at 6 o'clock, they voted on it. And I'm like, no. So I voted against that budget, not because I was negative, but we didn't follow the due process. How can you do your capital plan if we only see it a half hour before we get to vote on it? I'm happy to say that this council asks a lot of questions. They demand a lot of answers from our staff. And as a result, we spent well over 20 to 24 hours just on budget items alone. The original proposal from staff to council said we need a 25-cent increase. We got that down to 20. Now we have it down to 17 cents. Can you imagine if we went with a 25-cent increase? I mean,
so you're happy then with the way that everyone discussed the budget? Do you think everyone on council was
and
in
what
consensus?
were the kind of contentious issues or debates that happened at the council meeting?
well, there's quite a few. We have some councillors very strong on completing the AT trail. Most of us campaigned. I know my campaign in particular was focusing on the water and sewer. If you don't have water, you really have nothing. You can buy a piece of land in the county, but if you can't find water, you're hard-pressed to get a mortgage to build a house on it because the banks know better. Likewise, all the development that's happening outside of the town, around the fringe area, require town water and sewer. So we heard from our engineer now, contrary to what was being said during the consolidation meetings, our sewer plant has a capacity of 1.8 million gallons per day. We were at 1.65.
Already.
During a rainy event, we would exceed 1.8. So we have to do a lot of work, and we're spending $5 million on the front end upgrade, and we're going to try to put a bypass through the system so that when the rain hits, I mean, it's a 40 million gallon open swimming pool. You can imagine if you own a pool in your backyard, when it rains, it fills up. So can imagine a huge pool the size of that when it rains. And plus, we're having our storm sewer sometimes empty into the sanitary sewer as well. So we're getting more water into it. So it really affects how we treat it.
And so, how much of these technical details do you understand as a mayor? No, because I'm sitting here and saying, if I was to hear this, it'll take me forever to really understand it, let alone have an opinion on it. How do you manage that?
Well, that boils down to the education component. When you're a business student at St. FX, you don't know as much as the professors, but they feed it to you in a way that you can understand little bits and segments so you get the bigger picture. And I think that's what our staff have done. Kyle Meisner is our new engineer or director of public works. He is very good at breaking down the details. Like, we don't have to know the operational parts, but we have to know how it flows, how it operates as a whole, as a body.
Understood. I think it makes so much sense because I think infrastructure, it was built 50, 100 years back and it needs renewal. I think most towns and cities in Canada are facing that challenge. We are not alone. And somebody needs to pay for it. And you have found a way to do that. But, it's juxtaposed at a time when affordability and housing crisis is paramount on people's minds. It's unfortunate in some ways where we are seeing rent increases in our town as well, unavailability with houses. Town does not have space to build those houses. And so these are, shared challenges of us all and you as mayor. So how does one kind of square your kind of aspiration to make this town and community affordable for everybody, including renters who probably face the harsh brunt of it? and the need for capital investment and budgets.
You touched on a lot of things there, so let me try to break them down. Housing is a Canada-wide issue. It's not just unique to Antigonish. Affordability also is a Canada-wide issue, not just unique to Antigonish. So when you talk about adding additional housing, so it's the old supply and demand. If you only have 10 units available and 15 people are looking for them, the people who own those units can charge the price. In order to increase that stock, you need the infrastructure to support new growth. And it's very simple. I just explained about the sewer plant. We have limited capacity. So the more, as you touched on, very little space in town to grow, the provincial government will not allow us to expand our borders. Therefore, we have to rely on our neighbors, the county. These two councils, both the town and county, have met twice since the October elections. We have laid out on the table the town's perspective, the county's perspective, the projected growth, and how it's going to impact the infrastructure. And we've come to a conclusion, like right now, the county council is contributing $900,000 to the front end $5 million project with the sewer plant. So the town has to contribute 1.8, county's 900,000.
I know in the June 18th meeting, I think Leon McClellan brought up the idea of when it comes to roads specifically.
This is the county council meeting.
Yeah, the county-town joint session,
joint session
was saying like, we have this issue of there's so many people from the county using the town roads, obviously, every day. Well, what if the county just sends a bit of money towards the town for the infrastructure upgrades that you're talking about, for these roads that are specifically used so much by county residents? Is that an idea that you're currently discussing?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So tell us a little about
tell us about that.
And county council they seem warm and receptive to the idea. But you have to remember the provincial government has two sets of rules, one set for towns and one set
that's the kind of crux. So we often pitch the conversation between town and county, but actually there is a superstructure ecosystem
the province.
that creates the fundamental tensions.
Sure.
That's right. So it's called the Municipal Government Act. Without that piece of legislation, towns and municipalities will not exist.
Right.
So we only exist at the pleasure of the province.
Right.
So for instance, every road and street in the town is 100% owned and maintained by the town.
Right.
You live in Sylvan Valley. It's an older road. So it's plowed by Department of Highways?
I believe it's town plowed up to the driveway.
No. That'd be the county. So the county may be plowing your own. So if that's the case, it would be called a J-class road. J-class roads receive 1/3 funding from the province, 1/3 funding from the residents as a tax area rate, and then the other 1/3 is paid by the rest of the county.
There's a level of absurdity to this, I find. Do you ever... Because I feel like you probably have to explain this to people all the time who are asking you the difference between these sorts of road. Yeah. Is there a solution that you can think of that would cut through the red tape to make it easier to maintain roads and to deal with these sorts of budgets? Like, what if you had like Sean Cameron's like magical wand that you could come in and fix things? What would you do to fix it?
You got to remember, with the three levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal, the federal government has all the money. The provincial makes all the regulations, and the municipals, we have all the problems because that's where people live. We all pay provincial tax. We all pay federal tax. So we count on those federal and provincial as the money drivers and follow the rules. So for instance, when you come in Highway 337, you enter onto Hawthorne Street. Is there a difference between that highway
coming into
Main Street? Do you notice the difference? It's the same road.
Absolutely.
No.
Right. So why is it when you hit the town line, now the town's responsible for 100% of the maintenance and costs of that road?
Yes, that seems absurd. So what would you do to fix it?
I would hope the province, in their wisdom, would say, okay, that is considered a trunk. So for instance, Hawthorne Street.
These ones that are coming from the county
from
into
a
the
highway.
town.
Yeah. So we would have Main Street coming from 245, or do I have those numbers mixed up? Maybe Hawthorne's 245 and 337.
245 is out Hawthorne. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So those are extensions of the highways, go through our town to get you out of town or elsewhere. So those would be considered the trunks. I would like to see the provincial government take 100% ownership of those as part of the roads.
Yeah, but there is a discussion, this proposal of the town and the county sharing some costs, or the county contributing a little bit to those trunk areas.
Well, they're contributing, and the history has been there. In 2004, when Appleseed Drive was being considered, that's where the new schools were being built, correct? That's county. The town contributed $70,000, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to get special legislation to spend infrastructure money outside of our jurisdiction.
Interesting. So you can't even just budget it, put it there. You have to get approval.
Correct.
Interesting.
By the province, who sets the rules. Okay, but they allowed it. So the precedent is there. We would like, we see those as extensions. Like Anuj and I, we pay provincial tax. And so if you're living out, say, around the Cape, the province pays and maintains your roads. Well, technically, Anuj and I paid a portion of that road through our provincial tax.
Yeah, there's a bit of absurdity in that you're paying tax for the roads in town and you're paying tax for my roads out in county, but I just pay the one form of tax for road.
Yeah,
maintenance.
I think, if we dissect it to that linearity, it becomes absurd.
Yes.
And that's where I think the big picture needs to be kept in mind of how do we all, work together in ways that sometimes I subsidize you and you subsidize me, because we can never get that dollar and cent, completely mashed and aligned. Going back to the issue of taxation and
yes.
Are you happy with where we have landed? Are there future increases that might come? And as a townie, if I may ask, my own house valuation has gone up about 40-50% last 3-4 years. And so that is so this is on top of that, right? So it's a compounding impact that is having on households. And so even though it's 15%, I was calculating it's coming to about 23% for me because of the valuation increase.
Yes.
And so, some of us might be able to be comfortable with that because the dollar numbers are maybe not that big. But some of us are, renters who will get passed on to them. There are people who are elderly and live on pension. They are single mothers. So, how do we kind of make this more human? And has the council thought of that, talked about it?
Like I said, we met for 20 to 24 hours, and these were the very issues that we were tossing about. It's not easy, and we don't take it lightly. I mean, these were serious issues. Right. But the state of our infrastructure is such that if we don't fix it, we're not going to kick the can down the road for the next council to decide. We decided, okay, enough's enough. We've neglected it so long. You have to do it. Think of your house. If your roof is bad, you have to fix the roof, or else everything else inside is going to leak, get moldy, and you're going to cause more and more issues. That is the sorry state of our water and sewer lines. We put a camera down in one of the lines, and they lost the camera because the bottom of the pipe is effectively gone, and they can't retrieve it. But maybe when we replace it, we will.
It's prevention. It's long-term prevention, and I think there was something in there as well about raising a street based on the threat of floods.
Yeah, if you think of where the bridge, when you come off the bridge on Main Street towards Tim Hortons to the railway tracks, there's a dip, and that has always historically flooded and caused a problem. When we had a flood, you can't get to the hospital that road.
Right.
So your detour is to go through Cloverville, Jimtown.
It's absurd, it is.
It's a 45-minute delay.
Antigonish Farmers Mutual is not just an insurance provider, they're your neighbors. As a mutual insurance company, they're owned by policyholders, not shareholders. That means they always put their clients first. From protecting homes, cars, fishing vessels, or even farms, they're there when needed most, with personalized service, fair rates, and peace of mind that can be counted on. Antigonish Farmers Mutual, insurance built on trust, backed by community. Visit their Main Street location for a quote or some friendly advice. Times have been tough and intense for a lot of us lately. If you or a loved one is struggling with feelings of isolation, being overwhelmed, or are looking for support during a difficult transition in your life, consider professional therapeutic services. Amberly Bolton Counseling Services provides evidence-based clinical support for loss, grief, depression, and anxiety. Amber Lee is a registered social worker with a provisional clinical specialization from the Nova Scotia College of Social Workers. As a registered social worker, she can direct bill insurance benefit programs to offset your own out-of-pocket costs. Amber Lee offers therapeutic support for individuals and families and works from an attachment-informed philosophy that promotes self-compassion and nervous system attunement for youth, adults, and children. For more information on the specific therapies Amber Lee offers, including TheraPlay, Safe and Sound Protocol, parent-child sessions, or float-assisted psychotherapy in partnership with Nepsis Flotation, please reach out or book online through her website, amberleebolton.com, or email info@amberleebolton.com. Yeah, and there's you have a tax exemption thing that you mentioned for very low income people
Yes.
to avoid some of
that
this.
got
Is
announced on the radio yesterday.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Okay. We used to have a flat $450 a year for if your income was below $18,000, you qualified for $450 tax exemption. We've increased that to $35,000, but we tiered it so the lower your income, you can get up to $750
Right.
and a tax rebate. So you're probably thinking, well, if the average house in Antigonish is about $209,000, and I'm talking capped assessments, I'm not talking about
Yeah, not what you
your-
could sell
your
in store.
assessment.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
If someone's living on 18,000, they would be hard pressed to try to maintain that house. So any little help
Right.
we give them. So by increasing that to 35, you give them a little more breathing room,
Mm.
and it seems to work. We only had 19 people take up on it last year.
But this year with that increase, it might be more.
Well, we're hoping
Right.
with the increase and this podcast broadcasting, the radio broadcasting.
Oh, so they learn because you have to apply. You don't
Yes.
automatically get it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I was just reading, did some research just as we were talking. Here is, do you know how much surplus county has in their budgets right now?
The county has the
Yeah,
surplus,
yeah.
probably over 10 million. I don't know.
It says it's close to $45 million.
Okay, and the town does not have that much.
No,
I think
I'm
less
just saying,
than 4.
so here are the kind of levels of paradoxes that we are living in. And I'm not saying either or this, that, or other. These are the facts that are coming up in a quick research. So, this needs to be kind of part of this conversation, don't you think?
As apparently the county representative in the room, I authorize under $1 million. Yeah, because this is going back to the overall budget here. 1.2 million ish is what you'll be raising with an increase in taxes. But these projects are costing over 22 million. So
Correct.
where's the other $20 million coming from?
As I said earlier, the feds have all the money,
Right.
the provinces all the regulations. So we're lucky that our staff have been very good at pulling out grants.
Grants.
Yes,
And grants coming from
federal and provincial government.
okay.
So
Yeah.
the
And probably it's they call it grants, but these are investment in Canada.
it is
Right? So it is not the dole out. It's our money that we have paid in taxes.
exactly.
Right.
We're getting back. Yeah.
The ICIP, and I know the acronyms, but I don't know what
No ways.
the
Yeah.
Infrastructure
acronyms would work.
Canadian
Yeah.
something fund. There's a bunch of funds. We used to call them gas tax money
Right.
that you would pay. So that money was to be put back into municipalities for infrastructure, but it never kept pace, and we've never kept pace with our tax rate. We should have been incrementally, and what we should be doing is targeting one section, like for you to paint your whole house all 1 year will be a lot of money. But if you broke that down over 5 years and paint maybe the bedrooms, maybe the living room another year, the kitchen another room, the family room, and then maybe
Understood.
the outside,
Mm.
it lowers that burden each time.
Yeah. I have another question, if you don't mind.
Oh, I'll just one question to
Go
follow
ahead.
up on this real quick.
Sure.
I seem to recall that that you needed to increase tax rates in order to access some of that grant money. Is that-
Yes.
True.
Okay.
Yeah. In order for us to get the money, the way the programs usually work is that we have to spend it and then
Match.
They
submit,
match it or
submit reimbursement.
I see.
So if we don't spend ours, we don't get the other money back.
Right.
So part of this rate is because you'll get more money from the federal
Leverage.
government.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Absolutely.
we call them 70-cent dollars, right?
Right.
We're promised 70 cents, but we have to spend our 30. If we don't have our 30, it doesn't matter. You're not going to get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like these big deals. I mean, hey, I'll give you a hotel room, but I'm going to give you 70% off.
Yep.
But if you don't have your 30%, you're not going to take advantage of it.
Yes.
If county or if the town was a corporation or a private corporation, it would have showed all the investment on its balance sheet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So, we don't do that, from accounting point of view. So all the infrastructure that you're building are your assets. They are not expenses. And in fact, Mark Carney, in his reimagination of Canadian budget, is actually proposing this distinction. And it's fascinating conversation at the larger level. But I think, the pivoting to other question that is coming up in my mind, as you said, town has limitations in how much it can build further in terms of its space,
Yes.
urbanization, and like it or not, the donut around the town is urbanizing, like it or not, and in a manner that is so-called urban in some ways, and becoming more urban. So, how do you see that expansion of urban space, moving forward? Is that part of the conversation with the county?
It has to be.
Yeah.
And growth is good.
Right.
The town, because of our boundaries, we have limited growth.
Right.
The growth has no choice but to go what you call the donut, what I call the fringe. So one idea could be the county could have a rural rate if you lived out on, with your own well,
In
your own
Maryvale
septic.
or Edisag or where we are.
But if you live in what you call the donut, they could have a suburban rate.
Right.
Yeah, this makes sense, I
Right.
suppose. Because you're sort of already
Because
talking about
the
that.
suburban rate, as you get on the fringe of town, you want sidewalks, you want streetlights, you want water and sewer. And all those things come with a price.
Right.
So that's a thing that could be negotiated with town, county, and the
Province.
province to create a series of rates for a fringe area where a lot of the roads and the services are sort of shared between both.
And make it
Yeah.
fair for everybody.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you are a farm out, in wilderness, you don't have to apply for the same tax rate as the fringe area.
Correct. The tax rate, again, I'm glad you included the province, because the province dictates like R1 zones, which is a single family dwelling. R2 is typically a single family dwelling. It could have more units than R3s. We have different codes for them, of course, but if you could be a landlord, you're not taxed commercially, you're taxed residential, although it is a business.
I would imagine the provincial services like hospital, like schools, even I would dare say university, that often don't, they're tax exempt. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they do draw upon the services of the town.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, should there not be rationalization around that?
Well, as you mentioned, both the university and the hospital are funded by the province.
Right.
So we do receive from the province what's called a grant in lieu of taxes. So for instance, St. FX, we only receive it on the residence, because if St. FX wasn't able to house the 1,800 students on campus, those students would be in our community and being housed. So therefore, we would be receiving tax revenue from housing them.
Yeah.
If the university wasn't doing it. So the government gives us that. So one of the bad things, when Lane Hall got torn down, we lost some money because
it's calculated literally on the number of students who
number
could
of
be on
rooms.
campus.
Yes.
Number of rooms. Okay.
100%.
Interesting. So that already sort of happens.
Yeah, but I'm saying, we as, before and half an hour before, I had not thought of or understood many of this dynamic nature of the tax revenue expense, responsibility ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right now I'm still fuzzy, but it's much clearer now of where the lines draw between the lines in the sand. But yeah, fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, thank you for the opportunity. I would welcome a chance to come back when.
Yeah, we'll sit down. We'll get less fuzzy, Anuj. We'll have more interesting questions for you.
And we need to hug each other because we are not enemies, really.
we're enemies for different reasons,
Okay,
but not
that's
because of the town-county divide. I'll hug you as a county.
We don't call them enemies. I mean,
Thank God. I appreciate that clarification.
No. Like in our household, I don't know. Are you married? Do you have a partner?
Yes.
All right.
My
So-
wife is not my enemy.
That's right. But I bet once in a while you may have disagreements.
Right.
Never.
Really?
Sean, I can't go on air saying that. Occasionally, yes.
Right? So we all love our spouses, but there's sometimes we have disagreements. So I got elected by the town citizens. So I'm doing my utmost best to do the best for them. And if that means trying to pressure the county as to giving us more money, as you mentioned, Councillor McClellan, ask them politely. They're not bound to do it. But by asking, you won't know unless you ask.
Sure.
And I think they're kind of open to the reception off that idea. How they can do it, that's kind of in their ballpark.
Yeah.
That does seem logical.
But it does.
Maybe we should get the county people and the warden and councillors here as well, and just get their perspective on that.
Well, I would like to invite you
Yeah.
both to our next joint council meeting. They're all open.
Right?
Yeah, that is
And-
handy. It's not in camera. That's good to know.
No.
Sure. We'll show up. We'll hang out.
Anything else that you left out that you would not like to say?
Maybe we didn't get to something important.
I would just like to say that although we hit the residents with a large increase, this year's budget is more than just the numbers. It's about protecting the services that our residents and our neighboring residents rely on. And we're making smart investments for the future of our town. These were difficult decisions, but it's grounded in sound and responsible leadership, and we're looking at the long-term vision of Antigonish.
That is logical. I think these, especially in the context of climate change, when you're dealing with increased pressure on the sewer systems, I think spending money to upgrade them is totally logical.
And we didn't even get to the disaster response capacity that we
We'll
probably lack. Yeah.
Yes, well, I'm
Yeah.
hoping we can
Yeah.
have Blaze on here and other people
Yeah.
to talk about that.
Yeah.
But this is
Amazing.
that makes total sense to me. And then it all comes down to these insane details about how to pay for it and who pays for it and, and who's happy about paying for it or who's not.
And who's using it?
And who's
So,
using it. Yeah.
Getting back to your original thing, I hope we answered some of those questions about housing. Unless you have proper infrastructure, you cannot add to the housing. Like, are you doing a service or a disservice to the existing users? The second thing we have, I also forgot to mention, town and county through our HAP funding, we are exploring new water wells to increase the source water. You got to remember, water is not just for consumption. Water is also for fire protection. So as you build a 4-story apartment building, you need proper water protection. So the new arcade, for instance, being built,
Is that in the town?
that's in the county.
Okay. I was wondering about that. That's just up
That's
just
a news
over the
called-
border, eh?
Yeah,
Just
it's
to
in-
add to the confusion.
Just to
Yeah.
add the confusion.
It's in that donut.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
a donut.
It
Yeah.
crossed the old 104.
Yeah.
And so the county will have to make investments on that road and put sidewalks and streetlights, et cetera.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things is that there's no water pressure for the water
Because
sprinklers.
it's up on a hill.
Correct.
Ah.
And when the town designed the water system, we designed for the town. Like, if you're familiar with piping, your biggest pipe is closer to the source and it gets smaller as you go out to the end. So now suddenly you have these small pipes and you're trying to hook a big pipe from a 136-bed institution into a smaller pipe. So there's going to be upgrades needed there as well.
What's the solution? Do you build a reservoir up there? Or?
Well, you do, but you call it a cistern and you bury it so it's there.
Yeah.
Walmart and I believe Superstore have
Okay.
cisterns. And if you look at the old Central Supply building, there's a pond outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And when they built
right.
that, they have a $250,000 pump, which they hope has never been turned on, never has to be turned on, because that pumps water into the sprinkler system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So
Okay, so there'll be something or a cistern.
I always wondered what that pool was about. Okay.
That's
Now
what
I
it's
get the
for.
answer.
Yeah.
and there's 2 pools. There's another dry one, and that's because when you have hard surface area, you get more water, and so that collects it and then slowly enters it into the drain, so you don't get those mad runoffs like you do in those climate change events that washes away everything.
So that's it. Yeah. So, John, thank you very much for being here. This is informative for sure, and hopefully we'll have you back.
Thank you so much.
All right.
We'll definitely spar again.
We will.
All right. We'll see you later.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Antigonish. If you like the podcast, don't hesitate to subscribe. Just go to letstalkantigonish.ca and click. Voila! You'll receive new episodes right in your email inbox.
This podcast is a labor of. Please consider making a contribution, small or large, maybe a monthly subscription.
Right now, it's just Anuj and I doing this in our free time. You can read all about the podcast and ways to support us at letstalkantigonish.ca. And if you're a local business that wants to sponsor the podcast or even place an audio ad, we are certainly not opposed. A huge thank you to all of our subscribers and especially our paid subscribers, which have helped us to buy the audio equipment that we needed to get this thing off the ground. And remember to get in touch with us if you have an idea for a future episode or a burning question about life in Antigonish that you want us to explore and get answers to. We welcome all feedback. Just email us at letstalkantigonish@gmail.com. Let's talk, Antigonish.